I am highly curious because honestly, to ask questions from within, like you're in this massive corporate world, also in Israel, and
Yeah.
then to ask these questions from within, how did you navigate this? And I mean, it's not that you stopped with COVID.
No, COVID was just the beginning. Well, now I'm used to it, so it's not a big deal. But it was quite a shock at the beginning because I thought that the people around me, which I considered to be intelligent, would appreciate critical thinking. And when I would present information to them or bring like legitimate, expert voices from the other side and research and also politically, I will show people that this is a global phenomenon that's happening all around the world. But no one wanted to hear logic at that point, because when people are driven, and this is me knowing that in my career as a marketeer, when people are driven by emotions and by fear, it clouds their judgments and their critical thinking.
Through a global lens, what's going on here that we are not seeing?
The big driver is money, and the powers that are changing things for us plebs are powers that are subordinate to three big power structures: the military, the financial, and the technological. Each one of them is a mega complex that has a lot of complex relationships inside of it that's pulling the strings to its direction, and you're creating that tension between all those powers. This is what the war is for. The war is to destroy in order to be able to create again and continue to perpetuate the fiat monetary system. It needs to continue to roll the debt because it's a debt-based system. So they're creating wars so they can continue creating more money, basically. Sad reality, and people die on the way. And my main message when it comes to Israel and Gaza and everywhere else that is experiencing wars is that the people are always the victims, and no matter what side you're on, and they are being fed with hate and fear and anger so that they can continue fighting with each other and hating each other, while at that time the war can continue and the money can continue being printed and people are being sacrificed. Things that would normally happen in years now happen in weeks, and your head is like going crazy and you become a bit nauseous about the changes, and that there are changes in so many different areas of life. So you have to learn to have compassion for yourself. That's number one. And number two, you have to learn to slow down.
Hey, and welcome back to New World in the Making, the podcast where we explore what it means to question, imagine, and co-create the world that we are stepping into. I was really looking forward to this conversation because Efrat is an Israeli independent journalist who really asks the critical questions from within. Questions that challenge the authorities and power structures around her. She's unafraid to stand apart, to speak truth even when it costs her. She's bold, courageous, and deeply principled. Before becoming a journalist, Efrat was a chief marketing officer at global companies, featured by the Wall Street Journal. Today, she's the host of You're the Voice, a podcast that's reached over 3 million views, where she explores geopolitics, Bitcoin, freedom, and what it means to live with sovereignty in turbulent times. So, let's dive in. Just a quick one, and I promise quick one, before we dive into the episode. I really want to take a moment to just say thank you for being here. And to keep this work alive and help it reach even more people, I need your help. Just by hitting that subscribe button, you're becoming an active part of this new world in the making. And you're enabling this conversation to grow into directions we can't even imagine yet. So thank you truly. And now, for real, let's dive into today's conversation. Efrat, thanks so much for being here today. I'm really excited.
I'm happy to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
I was already telling you I have so many questions. You have seen my whole question preparation because Yeah, you are such a massive inspiration, honestly. So before we go into all these questions, I would love for you to tell us a bit, who is this person and what did you make to become this person and what shaped you?
Right. So,
It's a big question. I
okay.
know.
So I'm trying to think where to start. So today I'm a journalist, independent journalist, and I have a podcast called You're the Voice. And I've been doing that, and I'm a public speaker, so I speak in many conferences and around the world. And I've been doing that full time for the past 3.5 years. Um, and I'm not young, so I'm 46
You're doing
almost.
that.
Yeah, I'm turning 46 next month.
I would
So
say that.
um, it means that I had a long time to be developing myself and developing a career before this present round that I'm in. And the previous life I had was a corporate life from the age of 25, 5 till the age of 43. I was working in corporations, global corporations, mostly some startups, so some smaller companies and some very large, mostly around technology. Almost 95% of my work was always around tech. At first, I was a computer programmer for a few years at the beginning, and later on, I transitioned to um, business development, sales, and marketing. And then I landed on marketing because I really liked it. And most of my career was in marketing, tech marketing, startup marketing. And I also created my own community slash business with two partners for 7 years. It still exists. I just retired from it. GCMO, Global Chief Marketing Officers, and it's a community of 150 global CMOs like myself at the time. Um, and it was great experience to be both an entrepreneur and a corporate CMO at the same time for a very long time. So I've developed myself career wise really in the world of communications, marketing, and technology. And the reason I had shifted in the last 3 years to this new chapter that I'm in is because COVID really woke me up. In 2020, I started becoming more active politically. So at first it was political because nothing made sense to me. So I went to the streets and yeah, and started protesting, and I was an activist for a while. But from the very first moment, I mean, not very first, it took me like 1 or 2 months to understand that something's wrong, um, which is not too much. Some people never got it.
Okay.
But after
Exactly.
a couple of months, when I understood that something's wrong, I decided to go out to the streets, and I was an activist for a while. I was very vocal. I decided consciously to like put my career and my reputation and everything on the line because I it was more important for me to speak the truth and to shed light on truth and to also protect myself, my rights, and my son than to follow the herd and just do what everyone else is doing or what people are telling me to do. So I did that. And at first it was accepted in my workplace and in all the communities I was part of. But slowly, I started getting kicked out of all the different circles I was a member of. And I gladly accepted it because I kind of walked into it knowing what I am risking and willing to risk all of that because, as I said, the trade-off was more important, like speaking the truth and also protecting myself and my son was more important than being part of any social circle or getting any recognition or acknowledgement or all that bullshit, which is, I mean, it's great when you talk the truth and you get recognized, But I don't think it's okay to be deceitful or a cheat, or a criminal and be acknowledged, which is the state of the world today on the most part. So yeah, and then after my activism chapter, I decided to just focus on creating content, because as I was an activist, I started creating content because these things come relatively naturally to me. I mean, it's not always easy, but I can do it. Like, I can create videos and I can speak and I can write and do all these things that were skills that I've gained the last 20 plus years. I decided
Yeah.
to start creating content, but I never came into this as like, I'm going to be an influencer and I'm going to get like big contracts from brands and blah, blah, blah. Like, this is not me, but you know, I started creating content, and the demand came. Like, people from all over the world were following me and asking me to continue doing that. So I understood that it was important. And at one point, when I decided to finish my relationship with my employer and to move on to the next phase, I decided to take this on fully and just do content for a living. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna start a podcast. I'm gonna write. I have no idea how I'm gonna make money out of this, because being a journalist or having a podcast is not something you can get rich from. At least not if you're not Joe Rogan or someone like that. But I was confident that my skills and God will help me, and I can just start this journey, and the way will just show itself to me, because my heart is clean, because I'm doing the right thing, because I deserve it, because I want it. And that's what happened. And here I am now, 3-4 years after I started that second chapter, and I really like what I do. And who would have known, I also have become quite a known, popular, whatever figure in the Bitcoin space, because
Yes.
I discovered Bitcoin as well in my journey, and I fell in love, because for me that was like the perfect solution to protect. As I told you, I was looking for protection from the state, or from anything. I was just looking for sovereignty. I didn't want to be surrendering to anyone's commands anymore, or mandates or policies or all that bullshit. I want to make my own choices in my life. So I was looking for anything that would make me more sovereign, and Bitcoin came, and it's a very beautiful freedom. Speaking of technology,
Yes.
and being so long, like 25 years in tech, I understand technology pretty well. And after investigating this and analyzing it from all the different directions I could, and I still do, I'm a humble student of it. I found that that is probably the number one tool we have today to preserve our private property and our sovereignty, um, and create generational wealth as well on the way, which is a great added bonus. So I'm also a speaker in a lot of Bitcoin conferences, and I create Bitcoin content. I interview a lot of people in the Bitcoin space, but my interviews are not technical. They're mostly focused on, they do, obviously we talk about tech, but they focus more on the philosophy behind Bitcoin and the economics and, yeah, different areas that I find interesting. I'm sorry, it was a long answer to a short
No,
question.
no, no, no. And I'm like, we're going to go into a lot of these things of what you just said. I am highly curious because honestly, to ask questions from within, like you're in this massive, corporate world, also in Israel. And
Yeah.
then to ask these questions from within, I mean, honestly, I was asking questions during COVID times and I was based in Spain. And like in general, it's just tough to ask questions from the inside, especially you were mentioning, okay, the your reputation was maybe on the line and stuff, but also close family, friends. How did you navigate this? And I mean, it's not that you stopped with COVID. It's like it went
No, COVID was just the beginning.
exactly. So you're like, how that and That's why for me, it was like really honestly such an inspiration to see how much courage you have and how bold you are to just go and ask these very uncomfortable questions, especially
Yeah.
coming from inside, you know? Because like it's quite easy-ish to ask these questions from the outside and be kind of judged from the outside in a way, but especially coming from the inside and being kind of the trader from the inside. I don't know. Just how did you make you feel the whole situation? How does it? Yeah. How do you feel with that? And how do you navigate that?
Well, now I'm used to it, so it's not a big deal. But it was quite a shock at the beginning because I thought that the people around me, which I considered to be intelligent,
Yeah.
would appreciate critical thinking. And when I would present information to them or bring like legitimate, expert voices from the other side and research and also politically, I will show people that this is a global phenomenon that's happening all around the world. And when we know, in marketing that if they all use the same messaging document and have the same propaganda, then there must be a plan behind this. There's an orchestrated agenda. But no one wanted to hear logic at that point, because when people are driven, and this is me knowing that in my career as a marketeer, when people are driven by emotions and by fear, it clouds their judgments and their critical thinking. And so no one wanted to participate in my game. So I had to courageously walk alone in a lot of those circles that I was in. But also that was a blessing because as I said, I was either kicked out of some circles, but also left many groups and social circles. I was a very popular person. Like, I'd get invited to everything and anything. And
Doesn't
yeah, and
surprise.
people would want me in places, and all of a sudden I started being like not invited, and I would see that things are happening and I'm not invited. No, at first it was like weird and it was offensive, and then I said, you know what? Fine, great. It means that I don't need to be there. It means that I have another path. It took me some time, but that was part of my spiritual awakening process that started to unfold in tandem with the intellect and the critical thinking. Like, it's not enough to just be aware
Yeah.
of the truth. It's also super important to start awakening and understand that that is a process and a journey in itself
Mm,
that is, in my opinion, is never ending. You just
mhm,
started, but then you just walk the
mhm.
path, and there are always more levels to the game. I always call it a game because I think life is a game, and not because I, God forbid, disrespect people's hardship in life. I don't try to make it, a like a disrespectful comment. No, just because this is a game we're in. We're born into this to experience as many experiences as we can and learn as many lessons as we can so that we can continue to evolve and develop and become the best version of ourselves and discover our full potential. And each breakdown in life is just an invitation to envelop one of those growth opportunities. And so that's the journey that I embraced and accepted, radically accepted, when I was experiencing all this social pressure and social outcasting and name calling and ridiculing and all that stuff. And I thought, and I still think that it just gets stronger and stronger all the time, that if you have decided to be on the side of truth and the path of awakening, and you have seen something about life that doesn't resonate with your truth or with, morals and ethics in life, and you have acted upon it, you've changed something in your life, or you called it out, or I don't know what your action was, but you acted upon it. I think it's your moral duty to then extend this type of being or behavior to other areas of your life.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you stop playing the game and you stay behind. And
Mm, okay.
what did you learn if the next thing presented itself and you didn't bring your newfound courage and your new wisdom into the next level of the game, right? So it's easy to play life on beginner's mode, and just
Yeah.
every new thing you see that is kind of corrupt or, out of the divine order or whatever, or not truthful, and you'll just go, oh, this is too much, like I'm not gonna go into that one too. I'm just like going to just shut myself off and just continue to just, look at my the cherry tomatoes that I'm growing in my garden, and just like focus on spirituality 101, and do meditation every day. And
Yes.
I'm not, no disrespect, like I'm loving, the spiritual path and everything, but I think it's a spiritual bypass to then ignore what happens in life, because it's more convenient and easier once you have already seen that there's work to do, and we
Yeah.
can be of service to humanity, because that is the end goal in life. I mean, yeah, we talked about developing yourself and evolving, but once you do that, you understand. I mean, part of that evolvement is to kind of the penny drops on the fact that you're here, not
Yeah.
just to fulfill your own potential, but also to be in service of humanity. So what are you going to do then? How
Uh-huh.
is your full potential going to serve other people? And so, yeah. So I think the bottom line on this long-ish answer again would be to play life on advanced mode,
Mm-hmm.
where you continue to extend your awareness and your awakeness into more and more areas of life, and aspire to be the best version of yourself.
I love this. And it brings in also the playfulness, right? That I think sometimes we forget to have a bit of joy and fun in life. We take it so serious, like the whole like I don't know. It's really refreshing to hear your perspective on this. Like
But
saying like, of
but to be honest, Adriana, it's not always fun.
course
It's just,
not.
as I said, I feel like it's a moral duty.
Yes.
I did not have fun to talk about what happened on October 7th in Israel. In fact, my son always says that when he looks at that video that went viral, that was like my viral moment, when millions of people around the world saw my video on the day of October 7th. I recorded it a few hours after the massacre happened. And he looks at this video and looks at my face and he goes, wow, you look so different and you look bad. And I know I do look bad. Like, if you go and check out that video, I look weird. I don't look like myself. I'm not playful. It's hard, but I felt like it was my moral duty to speak, because I could see through the lies and I could see what's happening. And I was positioned well to speak because of my previous background in the military in Israel, and I was serving close to where things have happened on October 7th. So
Wow.
I chose to do it. And it
Yeah.
took a lot of courage, but also took like just listening to my gut. I have to say this, I have to talk. Um, and so it's not always fun, but I do, I think the fact that I look at it as a game takes away some of the seriousness or the stress around it, because I know that even if I'm not having fun,
Yeah.
it's only a game in the end, and nothing bad's going to happen. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I'll die. And I've already confronted my fear of death. So I'm
Oh,
not afraid to die. So
wait,
if
wait.
I die, I roll over to the next life. So it's like my
Okay,
soul's
wait,
here
wait.
to
We
go.
need to talk about this. Wait. How did you confront your fear of dying? What do you think happens after death? How did you become in the first place? How did you get into spirituality? Like, okay, we need to unravel that
How did I
first.
become into spirituality? I think I think a friend of mine asked me,
Mm-hmm.
it was probably in 2020 or 2021. She asked me, "Do you know what the third, fourth, fifth dimensions are?" And I'm like, Nope, I have no idea. And she said, well, let me tell you, because I think you're going to find this interesting. And she started telling me, and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. Tell me more. And she started sending me videos and, sending me to relevant places. And I started listening to my favorite spiritual teacher, which is Lori Ladd. I don't know if you know her. She's American.
No,
She's gorgeous.
I'm
She's
gonna.
great. You find her on YouTube, on Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah, her name is Lori Ladd. Ladd. And I've been with her for 5 years. And I keep on, like, just now on the way to this interview, I was listening to one of her videos. And then from her, I branched out to many other people that I'm a curious person. So I always want to learn. So when I find something that resonates with me, I'm like, okay, give me more of that. And I continue to like find other people or more sources. So I've been reading books, listening to podcasts, and just also receiving signs that my path and my way is correct, because I was starting to really connect more to myself and to my higher guidance. And yeah, life was just showing me that what I'm doing and what I'm learning is in the right direction, and I'm just listening. I'm listening and I'm hearing that that's correct for me, so I follow. Um, yeah, so Dolores Cannon. I can name many, many people that really inspired me spiritually, but Lori was the one that really stuck with me for a long time. I love the books by Barbara Marciniak from the Pleiadians. Um, the book that impacted me the most was The Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak. Uh, and then it's a series of 3 books, which I
Okay.
read all 3. So they're really great. And then the Pleiadians are, in general, beings or entities that I feel that their messaging really resonates with me, and I listen to them a lot or read. And there are people that channel the Pleiadians. They're, I don't know if you've been following, but so one thing leads to another, and then things start connecting, because a lot of the things that those spiritual teachers talk about do come, like they are fulfilled in life, and I see them happening, and so it really reinforces the way. But what were you asking me about this? Like, I
Well,
want to
I mean,
answer.
like that all comes together, and I would say, what is your understanding then of life and spirituality and death? Because like, how did you
Right.
confront?
Oh, also, I then found David Icke and many other people. David Icke is great on the border of like spirituality and current affairs, and so
Okay,
that's
I'm gonna
really
link them
cool.
all in the show notes
Oh,
after.
David is like, everyone should know him. He's probably the biggest conspiracy theorists out there, like, quote unquote. And the last 30 years, 40 years have written so many books. Um, so how do I think of life? I think I gave you like it's my normie way of putting it, that I see life as a journey, that like a game that has levels, and we level up all the time. But I also think it's an experiment, to kind of test humanity and see whether our species is like can withhold a lot of the tests that we are experiencing in this third dimension, and can reconnect back to our powers that we have forgotten that we have,
Mm-hmm.
that we mostly experience on higher dimensions. And I think that the key to uh, to tap into those powers is through our feelings and emotions. That's like the very basic thing that people are not being taught how to reconnect with themselves. Yeah, through feelings and emotions, which are just energies and frequencies. Um, and once you learn how to tap into your powers through the energy of the feelings and the emotions, you can discover that you have much greater powers than that you probably knew you could have.
Yeah.
And we're mostly limited to our five senses in our consciousness. We think that we operate life on the five senses, but there's so much more to it. And we are being taught that that's life. That's it. The third dimension and the five senses, like this is it. And so once that door opens and you understand that there's more to it than what you've been taught, and you also probably understand why you've been taught that it's so limited, to keep you small, to keep you suppressed, to keep you, in the very contained control prism that many entities or whatever groups around the world need you to be, then it all makes sense. And so I think the emotions and the feelings are key to higher realms of consciousness. And then with each person, if they listen to themselves, they will discover what their strengths are outside of those five senses, and how they can tap into special powers, I would say. Um, and it can take a while, and it's hard, and not everyone will discover it. Like, for example, one of the things that always intrigued me is, how do people channel, and can I channel? And
Yeah.
I think I can't, or at least I haven't experienced it yet, to be able to channel other entities or souls or voices. But I do have a very um, developed sense of imagination and dreaming, and I can visualize many things in my dream and be very active in my dream state.
That's
And
amazing.
I can also kind of switch to other dimensions, sometimes even in the waking state, and experience other things and have like flashbacks and things like that, or a lot of deja vu. So I don't know that I can control it yet, but it happens to me a lot. And also I get messaging in songs, which is quite unique. So I do listen to that, because that happens a lot to me, that when I get kind of downloads in songs, like I can wake up one morning and I'd have a song in my head that I haven't heard for 20 years, but the song will be in my head, and then I'll go check the words, and the words will mean something relevant to what I'm experiencing right now. So my downloads will kind of be in songs or in dreams, and not in like, oh, I hear a voice, someone talks to me and now I'm channeling. So, so you kind of gotta be paying attention to how that information comes to you, and what it tells you and why. Um, yeah. So, I mean, that, and then with death, how did
Yes.
I confront my death, or my fear of death?
Yeah.
Um, So first of all, I think I chose a very special or unique life to come into in this reincarnation. Being Israeli and Jewish, and kind of big mouth and courageous, and the combination of all of that is quite unique, because you don't see very many people
No.
like me.
And women as well.
And women, and have a second language, and very international and all that stuff. So I think I've chosen an interesting package to
Yeah.
come with. So and I feel like, and obviously I can never prove that, I do not have any proof for that, but I feel like I've been here many times before, and I feel like my soul is very old, like an ancient kind of old soul. I've done this. I'm ready for what's happening right now. And it doesn't scare me that much. And I can hold a lot. Like, this is one of my superpowers, I guess. I can hold a lot of information and a lot of tough stuff. And so it could be my upbringing that have, made me stronger and tougher than other people, because living in Israel is not the easiest thing. Although my childhood was great, and being born in the 80s and growing up in the 80s was not a hard thing. But then as you grow up and you have wars and, like all these operations security wise, and then you go to the army when you are 18 and you see a lot of things and you learn about life in a very real way.
Yeah.
And very, very different way than most young people, you become stronger. But but I can totally tell you that not many people in Israel are like me. So I
Right.
believe, yeah. So I believe that has helped, and I have I had like a lot of opportunities to imagine like the worst in life that can happen during wars, during, missile attacks, during, bad stuff. Sometimes when my big mouth says things and I feel like there is danger to my existence, because obviously the powers that should be don't like what I do or say all the time. And so I had opportunities to confront that fear of like, you know, something could happen to me.
Yeah.
And also putting myself in other people's shoes, people who have suffered a lot or people that have gone through bad stuff, and trying to imagine myself, like, how would I be if I was in their shoes? What would I experience? And I always get that feeling that, first of all, that I'm loved and secure and safe. And secondly, that if I do die, I just continue the journey and I'll use my powers or my soul's mission where it's correct, where I should be continuing it. And I trust the path, I trust the way, so I'm not afraid. Whatever needs to happen will happen. Um it's not that I want to leave this experience. I have a son and I'm happy with my life and I want to experience this to the max. In fact, I want to live till a very old age because I'm curious to see what life would be like.
Yeah.
But if I go, I go. It's like, okay, I've done my best, I've given it my all. Yeah. So that's kind of how I look at it. And I do believe that we come back in reincarnations. I don't necessarily think it's a must to come back.
Okay.
I do
Okay.
think that we have a choice even then, and that we choose. And so I'm here because I chose to be here. I
Yeah.
don't think it's a necessity. So it's I think it's a soul's choice, and you gotta be, I guess, crazy.
Yeah. To want to come to this like this.
And I think that we forget when we say
Yeah.
yes, we forget. It's like, just like when I gave birth, I was like, I'm never going to give birth again. And I didn't. I only have one son, but I could see myself being pregnant again and bringing another kid because we forget and it becomes okay again.
Yes. I mean, I was also listening to the interview you gave with Natalie Brunels,
Hmm.
and highly recommend this interview to everyone because it was just very inspiring as well. And I was listening to your story when you say that you have, on both your grandparents' sides, have very different experienced similar things, but then have very different ways of dealing with that. I mean, Holocaust survivors, and I mean, it's very,
Immigrants, yeah.
yeah. And I have to say, like, as a half German, I'm like, oof, it's like it really hit me, and I was like, wow, like honestly, wow. I was like, gosh, you know. Um,
You see, maybe
so
that's another thing, like at a very young age, being aware of the fact that so many people that are of my lineage have died,
yeah,
got me like so familiar with the concept of death at a young age, but not on a personal close scale. It wasn't like someone close to me had died. It's like you start thinking about what the whole family was murdered. It's like, why? What's going on? Like, what's happening in this world?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. And then like and I mean like the grandparents that you were very close with that were just still so life loving even after experiencing all these things. I mean
Yeah.
like how how did you um receive that, and where do you think came all this love and still this bright view on life after experiencing these horrible things? Like how?
Yeah, that's a great question. My grandparents, who both were Holocaust survivors, my grandfather was in, I think it was 8 concentration and death camps. And when the war ended, he was in Auschwitz-Birkenau. So he was there for 5, 6 years in all those camps. And my grandma was hiding in Switzerland with her younger brother. She fled from Belgium to Switzerland, and she was hiding there and was adopted by a Christian family. And she was there for 5 years while, or 4 years, while her family got murdered. Her parents and her sister got murdered, and everyone else. And they both, my grandfather and my grandmother, met in Israel in the 40s. They immigrated and met each other there, and decided to get married and have my father and his sister. And then when we were born, the first grandkids, my memories from my childhood with them were always positive. It wasn't like, it was never different. Like, they were always amazing grandparents, and I loved being with them, and I felt the best being with them. Both me and my sister have the same memories of them. And only in the age of 12, when I started questioning them about our heritage, they started telling the stories of the Holocaust. And I didn't know that, but apparently they did not share all those stories with my father and his sister when they were up until that point. So if I was 12, it means my dad would have been around 40 years old, 30 something, 40 years old. And up until that point, him
Nothing.
and his sister did not know all these details. So first of all, I think one of the ways they handled the atrocities that happened to them and their families were to hide it and not talk about it, or at
Yes.
least not talk about it with the children. Um, and at one point they decided, when I came and asked all these questions, that it's okay to reveal uh, those things that have happened. And I think at that point, something opened, especially for my grandfather, and he started documenting all the
Wow.
horror stories. And yeah, he gave testimonies to Yad Vashem, which is a museum in Israel for the Holocaust. And my grandma also told her story. She has a lot of holes in the story because of the trauma, she repressed a lot of it, and she didn't remember some of the time uh, from there. But they both started speaking more, and then I was, the only thing I could experience is being inspired, like, because my only question was, how can you go through all of these horrible things? Like, my grandfather's stories were basically how he managed to be saved from death time and time again. Like, in all those camps that he was in, it was a life and death kind of situation. You either go right and you're dying, or you go left and you're alive, kind of
Yeah.
those kind of stories. And one time this guy was hiding him inside a big carpet, and because he was hiding him in the carpet, didn't take him and he didn't die. It's like all these wild stories of how he managed to survive time and time again. So, and obviously, horror stories about how people around them would die all the time or would get killed. And so I was super inspired by how you can go through all of that shit and still be positive and be so loving
Yeah.
and not lose your mind. Because,
Yes.
mind you, in Israel, um, during the 50s and 60s, where a lot of Holocaust survivors came into Israel, um, they many people experienced mental health issues, and some of them committed suicide. Some of them, they couldn't handle what happened to them,
Yeah.
the traumas during the war. Um, so and not that I knew of it, but it just makes sense that, you go through all this shit, you may not be normal again. But
Yeah.
these two were like a couple of loving angels, and they were so positive and so loving and so always like giving us love. And I think love was their healer, because I think that through joy and humor and love and laughter, they were able to heal themselves, and to experience normal life again with the family that they had created.
Right.
And I think that their family and their friends, they had massive circles of friends. Like my grandma used to be that woman that was the time before mobile phones. So she had this address book. You remember those address books with the
Yeah.
phone numbers? And she
Yeah.
would keep in touch with friends of hers, normally women friends, all around the world. She would have the phone numbers of the friend in France and the friend in Germany and the friend in here and there. And she would call them and they would have conversation mostly in French because she was Belgium. They were both Belgium. So I always saw how important those circles of friendships and the circle of the family were important to them. And that really inspired me to understand, what's important in life, like family, friends, love, joy, laughter. These are all the things that can make you better in life. But at the same time, I think they had a lot of repressed trauma and memories. My grandma had cancer when she was 60 something years old, and she did recover from it and lived quite a bit after that cancer. But I think she was never very well after. And I think like she had a lot of diseases and stuff that are also related to the way she was conducting her health, but also I think she wasn't expressing a lot of, yeah, there was a lot of repressed trauma. But that's my individual opinion. I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a doctor.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So they were a great inspiration, and I can still feel them with me from time to time. So I think that they are guardian angels, really, and that they were, they went through everything they went through, but they have served such an important mission in their lives to then be a living example of how healing and light and and love can be, yeah, can be an inspiration to humanity to walk the tough path and discover their greatest their greatest potential. Yeah. So and I also have other grandparents from the other side which I loved very much, but was very different with them. And I did take also a lot of inspiration from them. They were hardworking. They were really, again, family values were very strong with them.
Right.
But I also took from them how I don't want to be, and how, it's very important for me. Sometimes this is what people don't get. It's not like we don't have to just look for the people who are positive in our lives and take example from them, but also use those people in our lives that have hurt us or giving us like negative example, and just use that of, to
No.
learn from it. Um, yeah, so there were things that I've learned from those grandparents that are still
Or
with me until today, that I use. But I'm being very mindful about, um, learning all the time, learning from people, learning from how they are, how they were, and how I am in relationship to that, and how I want to be. Yeah, I think that's my quest, to like always find the inspiration and how to be my best version.
wow, so powerful. Because yeah, I guess like right now we are going through times that are quite challenging. I would say. You're from Israel, where right now there is just, yeah, well, I mean, it's basically beyond words, like what's going on there.
Yeah, it's a
But
shit show.
yeah, but not
And it's
just
a
there.
shit
Like,
show in many places around the world, and it will be even harder, especially where you come from Europe. It's going to be quite difficult. Like the West is going to be difficult in the
yeah,
next few years. So yes.
yes, yes. So also, how do you what do you see is happening? What do you see is happening on a global um yeah, basically through a global lens, what are the power structures that are trying to hold on to what's going on here that we are not seeing? And well, we can go after that into how do we navigate this whole shit show.
So first of all, I would recommend people. I mean, I'm not an expert on that, on geopolitical stuff and analyzing the different systems. I am still a humble student, and I am fed from really smart people. And I would give a few names that I would recommend people to go and follow if they want to learn more in those areas. Two of them have been guests on my podcast, so I would recommend to go and listen to those episodes. And the third one will be a guest on my podcast soon. So the first two are Alex Krainer.
Right.
He's a great guy. The second one is Edward Dowd. And the third one is Simon Dixon. And they're all analyzing the big picture of the world, macroeconomics, geopolitics, to show you like what are the power factions that are kind of moving around the world and taking shape. Where I try to focus a little bit more in the last few months is on the monetary changes that are happening around the world and show through that lens how things are changing and where they're going. So I can come back to that a bit later, but if I will make a small, humble attempt to kind of give you an answer based on the information that I am fed on, and that feels very relevant to me, is
Yeah.
that what we call the world order as we have known it until today is changing. And it started changing probably 1 or 2 decades ago already, but
Yeah.
it had started accelerating that change in the beginning of this decade, so in 2020, with COVID coming into maybe even 2019. And so it was just a precursor to bring about that change of the world order and the change of the monetary system. And everything is kind of connected to money. And so if you look at the change of empires, normally there's a window of like 80 to 100 or 110 years in which empires change. So before the American hegemony that we are in right now, we had the British Empire, we had the Dutch Empire, we had the Portuguese Empire, we had many, many empires, and it's almost the cycle is almost 80 to 100 or 110 years. And every time the empire changes, we see a change in well, first of all, the decade that is dedicated to the change is always characterized by wars, pandemics, um, different types of emergencies, crises, which is what we're experiencing in the last 5 years and or 6 years, and we're still going to experience going forward. So it's no surprise that we're seeing, the climate crisis and the health crisis and the money crisis and wars and all that stuff, and the Russia Ukraine and Israel Palestine and all that stuff just makes so much sense when you zoom out and look at it from an historical perspective in the fourth turning kind of cycle. Um, so the world order is changing, and the world order is basically what are the rules of the big game of the world? Who is pulling the strings? Who is controlling the money? Who's controlling trade? Who's controlling the economics? Who's controlling governance? And that's why you started seeing from 2020 till now, the rise of those global organizations like the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization and the World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, all those global organizations that most of society never knew who they were, all of a sudden becomes familiar with them because everything is coming in up to the surface, and we are hearing those entities that are putting in place a lot of the agendas or plans for humanity. And some of those plans, they're not new. They haven't been created just now. Some of them are being fine-tuned and they're like in or being changed in the last few years, but these are things that have been in the works for decades. um, in fact, the whole push to a technocratic, transhumanistic society has started in the early 1900s. If you go back to one of my first episodes of my podcast with James Corbett, who's an amazing independent journalist and has the Corbett Report, he talks about the eugenics movement and how that movement has tried to always depopulate or, create a better breed. We've seen iterations of it in the First World War, the Second World War, obviously with Nazism. But that eugenics movement is alive and kicking until today. It's just shape-shifting all the time. And it has taken on the agenda of climate. And now under the name of climate, they are excusing the carbon credits crazy agenda of like we're gonna quantify everything under carbon, including humans, including natural resources, and we're going to either tax you or decide what gets to exist and what doesn't. And that's also part of a eugenics kind of mindset that has just shapeshifted with the years. uh, and so there are various long-term agendas that are at play in the world, and we are coming to the end of those plans. I mean, the end in terms of like they want to already have them implemented, and that you can listen to David Icke and hear how he talks about them for 20 and 30 years. And because they need to be implemented, can't hide them anymore. You have to bring, like, we're in the last stages of implementation. And when you want the people to participate already, you have to bring it to existence. You have to start introducing those things into reality, right? So your digital ID and your 15-minute cities and your climate stuff and your COVID health stuff, vaccines, all that stuff is out there now because it's being pushed until the end of, like, for example, Agenda 2030, which is a United Nations plan, has to be implemented by the year 2030. Yeah, it may get postponed a little bit because they are failing in many of their agendas, thankfully, but they are happening and you are feeling it wherever you are, because we are coming to the end of that sand clock now. We're running out of time in a way. So that's why they're being very, rushed to implement all that stuff. And the big driver behind a lot of this, or behind all of this, and this is where I highly recommend you listen to Simon Dixon, who is doing the Follow the Money, and showing you the traces of money throughout all of these agendas. The big driver is money. And the powers that are changing things for us plebs are powers that are subordinate to either financial institutions, which is what Simon calls the financial industrial complex, or they're subordinate to military industrial complex, or they're subordinate to the technocratic or the technology industrial complex. So he's mapping out three big power structures: the
Right.
military, the financial, and the technological. Each one of them is a mega complex that has a lot of complex relationships inside of it that's pulling the strings to its direction, and you're creating that tension between all those powers. And what we are feeling, all these changes, all these problems, all these ideas that are coming up to the surface are a manifestation of the tensions between those different power structures. um, and they're all trying to win. Like, they're all trying to control things. On top of that, you are seeing a change in the monetary order. So we are living in a world that is under what's called the fiat monetary system. And I don't know how much your audience is aware of the money system, but the money system, and this is what I cover mostly in my work, the money system is fiat, and fiat is money that is being created out of nothing by central banks, just to put it in a very simplistic way. And central banks and commercial banks are responsible for the creation of money with a mandate from governments. And they can control almost everything through the money creation power that they have. And we don't really have any say or any power when our money is controlled by those entities, and they can manipulate and control almost everything through money, whether it's the money markets or whether it's the money itself that you are using as an individual. And so the fiat system, and that system, the fiat system, exists everywhere in the world, in every country that you are in. So it doesn't matter which country you are, it just has a different name. So it's the US dollar or the euro or the shekel or the Australian dollar or whatever currency you're using. They're all pegged to the US dollar, which is currently the world's reserve currency. And the US dollar is not pegged to anything. It used to be pegged to the gold, but in 1971 it was depegged from the gold. And we won't get into all that story, but basically it's just paper that is being printed. And the only reason it exists is because we as humanity give our trust to the government or the bank to create that money and manage it for us. And we
Yes.
keep giving our power away, looping back to the beginning of the conversation, to those entities to hold and manage that money for us, which is money is a tool for getting what you want in life. It's a tool for communication and collaboration. It's a technology to allow people to coexist and have relationships with each other. So money is a wonderful tool. It's a great tool that can enable prosperity, but because it's been hijacked and we
Yeah.
are living under a fiat monetary system, we
Yes.
are subordinate to its rules, which are inflation and taxation. And again, we won't get into it. You can go listen to my podcast. I talk about it a lot. But here comes, yeah, and because we are living in such a world that is now changing, the change that we are seeing right now is from fiat to a digital fiat. And the fully digital fiat may be in the form of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, that I believe most of your audience have heard about, or in the form of stablecoins if you're in the US. Or if you are smart and you want to preserve your purchasing power, but also your sovereignty, it can be in Bitcoin. So it really depends, but Bitcoin in self custody, not Bitcoin under ETF, or not Bitcoin under a stock of some sort, or not Bitcoin on an exchange that you buy and you leave there on a website, but Bitcoin that you actually take custody of. Yeah, you buy it and then you take custody of it and put it on a hardware wallet or any other type of self custody tool. Um, so we are we are in the middle of the change right now. A world empire, which is the United States, to a new multipolar world that will have several blocks that are going to control the world. The United States will probably we'll see what happens. I don't know to say, but the shift is to a multipolar world where the United States may be responsible also for Greenland and South America, Central America, where um, Africa will be controlled by China. China will control, Asia Pacific and Africa, and Russia will control Europe. That's why you have the Ukraine-Russia war. Um, and Europe is being dismantled. I mean, not the EU as you know it as an entity, but just the power of Europe, which was a very strong entity before, and now it's becoming weaker and weaker. Yeah, with the powers that are basically doing a controlled demolition on this continent, stripping it away from its financial power, stripping it away from its resources and energy, and letting the financial industrial complex like BlackRock and others come in and basically reallocate the resources and the structure of this place. So the world, as they're trying to reallocate it now to
Yeah.
reshift the world order, and you don't have to like listen to me. You can go and watch all the videos that are coming out right now from the World Economic Forum. As we record this, it's happening in Davos at this moment. And they are talking about the changing world order. And when I do my lecture, which is on my blog, if you want to see it, about the musical chairs of the monetary order, I show you the receipts, the proofs for how they are all talking about the changing world order and the monetary order that is changing, which is driving everything. So yeah, this is what I research, and this is what I like consuming, because I want to understand the world I'm living in. I don't necessarily have a crystal ball and know to say what will happen in a few years or a decade from now, because many things can change, because people have
Yes.
and it also, speaking of spirituality, depends on us and how much we are willing to wake up to this tough reality and reclaim back our sovereignty and our powers, and inside of all this chaos find our small little bubble in which we can create a loving community and a fruitful relationship with others that can support us during this time, how much um, good relationships we have in our lives with other people that can support us, how much of our sovereignty we're going to hold in the form of our money and our Bitcoin and our wealth, and whether it's metals as well, gold and silver, etc., and how much we can develop skills that will help us go through life in a better way, like raising our children and not sending them to all of these institutions, or growing our own food and being more independent, being our own sovereign uh, with bodily autonomy. Like, how can we control our health? How can we control what we put into our body? How can we be aware of what's spraying above us on the sky? And how can we be better protected for that? So there's a lot that, if you're just starting to wake up to everything that's happening, there's a lot to take in and it's hard. But I don't see any better way of living life than this, because the more you know and the more courageous you are to face it, the more you can take positive actions in your life to actually adapt to what's happening, to adapt to the changes that the world is going through. And on a spiritual sense, the world is also shifting in terms of its frequency, and the frequency goes higher. Earth is changing. There are, I don't know if you guys are following like space weather, but the sun is delivering a lot of energy to Earth, and our vessel, which is our body, is not able to withhold the new energy that is coming into the planet if we don't sustain it, if we don't nurture it and take care of it. So we have work to do also physically and mentally and spiritually to be able to withhold this chaos and change that is happening in life. And so there's a lot from many directions. And I think the best way to experience this is to really smarten up, wisen up, and have a clean heart and good heart and prepare yourself for what's coming. And talk to God and ask for his help, in these
Yeah.
turbulent times.
Yeah. No, I love the big overview that you just gave. And I think it can be so daunting. And I love that you call your podcast You're the Voice, because it brings us back to our agency. I think this is
Yeah.
something that's like realized so much in general, talking to all sorts of generations, actually. Just that, like, there's such feeling and sensation that who am I to do nothing? There's nothing I can really do with all these tensions, like everything that you just explained with, yeah, the all these structures in place, power structures in place. And also just like life in general just feels like it's super rapidly evolving, that we have no idea what's going on, like from one day to another, suddenly there is a new war. Suddenly like there's another like just attempt on taking over now an European country. Like I don't know, it's just like what is happening in this world? And then at the same time, you feel
And
like
censoring us and not letting us speak.
exactly. And then, I mean, I heard your stories about like all the tools that have been blocked, like that you're not able to use anymore. That is just completely insane. And yeah, I mean, just this feeling of who are we in all this mess? And I also heard you speak about finding peace within yourself,
Mm,
so that we're always talking about peace and all that, but like
yeah.
what I think also you refer to is it's basically outside we have this it's a mirror experience of what's also within, right? So if we are basically just all the time fighting with ourselves, and we just we're gonna act upon that also in the outside world.
Perpetuate it. Yeah, we
Exactly.
perpetuate it all the time. Yeah,
So
that's why it keeps on. It's
yeah,
in our reality because we have not completed it within ourselves.
right.
And it's not like because I have completed something related to war and peace in within me, now there is no more war. Of course, there are still wars in the world, but they're not part of my reality, and I reject them, and I will be vocal about it. So you want me to say, what that feeling that you described of
Yeah.
helplessness when you
Yes.
feel so small in
Yes. Yes,
yeah,
please.
right. So, and that's also, I mean, it's relevant what you described to many people on any age group,
Yeah.
but I think mostly to younger people, like younger generations, because they have their whole life ahead of them and they happen to be, you know, born and growing up in a time that is kind of crazy. As I said before, I was born in the 80s, and growing up like in the 80s and even 90s was kind of easy.
Very
It was
cool.
like piece of cake, no
Right.
mobile phones. You're like, bye mom, I'm going to see my friend. You come back at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. to have dinner and go to bed. And it's like life is easy. There are no distractions or very little. And, technology has really shaken up our lives.
Yeah.
So the younger generation is suffering more, because they're also victims to heavy manipulation and mind control by the technocracy and by social media and by governments who are just like completely going Orwellian on us. And it's like, you know, black and white, white is black. They're like confusing people, gaslighting people. So the young generation is completely confused. And at the same time, speaking of money, they are seeing their life becoming harder and harder because it's becoming almost impossible to think of yourself working at a normal job and being able to get to an asset like a house or other assets that you want to buy. Is like, how the hell am I going to do that? Even university becomes sometimes out of reach for many people because everything is so expensive, because inflation, as we talked about before, is eroding the purchasing power and makes everything more expensive. So I can totally identify and relate to that feeling of helplessness. So if you feel that, don't think you're weird. That's one thing.
Yes.
Secondly, you have to, yeah, like it's fine if you feel like this is hard, because when I was your age, if you put my young self in your place right now, I would feel the same. But here's what I had back then, which I also have today, which I'd recommend people to have as well today. And it's systems thinking. You want to start thinking about how the systems work. You want to decipher them. You want to understand how they work, because once you understand how they work, you can play the game better than the system. You can find the hacks. You can understand the principles that you can win. For example, when you learn about the monetary system, very quickly you learn how money creation works and how the supply of money impacts the prices and inflation. And once you understand that that is a root cause of the problem, you start asking the question, so how can I beat inflation? And the answer is not by, I'll take another job, or I will, I'll be born to a rich family, because you can't change that, right? You have the whatever parents you have and whatever money you have in the bank. And that's very hard to change. And you're not going to win the lottery, most probably. It's like very small chances. But what you can do is start learning about how assets work. How does real estate work? How the stock exchange work? What are bonds? And then what is gold, and what is silver, and what is Bitcoin? And when you analyze each one of them, you can understand which one of them have a different rules for the game to beat the inflation. And let me save you a lot of time. The only correct answers are gold and Bitcoin. But gold has, yeah, right. Gold has shortcomings because it's physical and it's hard to move. And Bitcoin is digital, and it's like digital gold. So it solves a lot of the problems that gold has. And so very quickly you can get to, you can read the book by Natalie that interviewed me, Bitcoin is for Everyone. It will teach you very quickly how you can, solve that riddle. And it's written in very simple language. And you can also, if you're a woman, you can join our Women of Bitcoin Summit that we do on the 4th and 5th of March, where we're going to introduce Bitcoin to ladies and young ladies from all around the world in this free event. So you can join us there. But going back to it, you feel hopeless mostly because you cannot win the financial game. If you had money, your life would have been easier. You would have less worries, right? If you have money in the bank and you're like, okay, so what do I want to do now? I've got money, I've got savings, I'm good. Like, I just want to focus on what I love, on what I'm passionate about. I want to develop my career. I want to be a singer. I want to be a painter. I want to, do sculptures. I want to travel the world and document what I do and open a YouTube channel and have that as my career. Like, imagine that you had that freedom of choice to really choose what your life's going to look like and not become a debt slave to the fiat system. And so a lot of your helplessness is due to the design of the fiat monetary system. So the system I would encourage you to first go and learn and then hack is the monetary system. Yes, you can do the same with the education system. And very quickly, you'll realize that you're also in a system that indoctrinates you and brainwashes you and is designed in a certain way to basically make you a very good, obedient, compliant worker in the working place. And that's also a subsystem to the fiat monetary system. So in the end and the health is similar as well. So you want to make the pharma companies rich. And that's why
Yeah.
the health system is designed the way it's designed. You know, like I'm giving you all the bottom line answers basically, but you can go do your own research and you'll basically find in the end of the day that everything is related to the monetary system. So
Yeah.
go and crack that one up. Go read a good book, the Bitcoin Standard, or Bitcoin is for everyone, and you learn about the fiat monetary system very quickly. Or go listen to podcasts. Uh, and once you get that and you get the solution to it and you start saving in a different form of money that
Yes.
is honest, that does not have inflation, it's a disinflationary kind of money, then your life becomes simpler and easier. And you would still have to work because it's not like you can generate that Bitcoin out of nothing. You have to work and earn fiat and transfer it to Bitcoin or start working for Bitcoin, right? Start earning in Bitcoin, right? That's possible as well. Or start mining Bitcoin. That's another thing you can do. Like there are many things you can do to help yourself, but you have to be smart about how you're going to help yourself. And you want to do a shortcut and not do what everyone else is doing, which is like go to work in McDonald's and earn, I don't know, a few hundreds of dollars and then put them on the S&P 500, or you want to be smart. So do
Right.
that. Go, this is my tip. Just go learn about the monetary system and then go learn about Bitcoin and start saving in Bitcoin and start seeing your life changes, and thank me later.
I mean, for me, it was like a very big
Thank
discovery.
Adriana later.
I mean, honestly, for me, it was the Jeff Booth's book that really got me
Yeah.
thinking about all these things. I mean,
His book is called The Price of Tomorrow.
yeah,
It's really recommended to read that one and also to listen to my 2 episodes with him on my podcast. He's amazing.
I was just listening to the last one. And yeah, I mean, I had the privilege to have him on the show as well, which was also
Oh,
just,
amazing. Incredible.
yeah, no, it was
Good
really, really
on
cool.
you.
And so, I mean, he talks a lot about the Bitcoin standard. So using Bitcoin as a currency, which I think for me, that was really the shift for me, which was like, okay, so things would be very different on a Bitcoin standard. But like for me, like it was just very hard to say, okay, so how do we get from where we are to the Bitcoin standard? And at the same time, like everything that we're talking about, it's like, wow, it's such a it's such a daunting system, right? So how do we also not fall into the trap of being like this against the other, like kind of having another war with like our current situation, like being at war with how we are living our lives and where we want to
Oh,
be, and
okay.
you know what I mean, like and how do we
Yeah,
see it
yeah,
as
yeah. I think
theme
I
of, and
understand what you mean.
also on a spiritual level of like, how do we make sense of this, because you were
Right.
saying we are kind of going in terms of like, well, levels and experiences and learnings, and so maybe it's like a big way of really kind of like pushing us to really go through the big learnings here, or I don't know what it is. Maybe you bring some.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have compassion
Mhm.
for yourself because it's, as we said before, first of all, it's a lot to take in. So you got
Yeah.
to do it slowly and responsibly,
Yes.
understanding that you're not putting yourself and your body under too much stress as you learn about everything.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
one.
Life.
Two, yeah, two, we are in a transitory phase. As I
Right.
said before, this decade, 2020 to 2030, and even
Yeah.
a little bit beyond, even 2035, those years are characterized by change, by
Yeah.
transition.
Yeah.
And when you are in a period of change, what you need to learn how to do is to adapt
Right.
because life is changing whether you like it or not, and it's hard. And it's hard both on a physical, materialistic level and on a spiritual, mental level. So you have to teach yourself how to adapt to change. It means that as things speed up and accelerate, and they do, you need to slow down. You need to teach yourself how to slow down to kind of balance that energy, because everything is becoming chaotic and accelerated, and things that would normally happen in years now happen in weeks. And your head is like going crazy, and you become a bit nauseous about the changes, and that there are changes in so many different areas of life. So
Yeah.
you have to learn to have compassion for yourself. That's number one. And number two, you have to learn to slow down
Mm.
and take time to nurture your body, because your body is a vehicle that takes you through this transitory phase. And if you do not give your body the nurturing it needs, the sunlight, the water, the just like a plant, the sunlight, the water, the sleep, right? The oxygen, the food, like everything you need to give a plant that you're nurturing, you need to give to your body. If you're not going to do that, your body is going to take you down. Right? Listen to what I'm saying, because this is gonna happen to you guys. I know it, because this is my lived experience over the past 5 years. If you don't learn how to slow down, your body's gonna go, sorry, I am slowing down whether you want me or not. And then you're going to
Yes.
start having, my leg got broken, my arm got broken. It didn't happen to me, but it's happening to people all the time now. Things happen to slow you down. You have an
Uh-huh.
accident. You find yourself lying in bed for 3 weeks now because life is telling you, sorry, sir, or sorry, ma'am, you got to slow down. Okay. So you better off not learning the hard way and teaching yourself those skills on your own, rather than getting them hit in the face by life. Right. So have compassion, learn how to slow down. And then the third thing is, remember that the changes from one system to another system are not changes that are happening overnight. They take, it's like we're in the third dimension, we're still experiencing life in space and time, linear time. So it takes time, even though it feels really fast, it takes time. And so you have time to learn, and you are going to be living with one foot in each system, right? You're going to, you cannot live 100% on the Bitcoin standard right now. I mean, you can in certain places around the world, but it's difficult. You still have some connection to the fiat life and world. And so you have to understand and adapt how you can minimize your interfaces with the existing system as much as possible, and teach yourself how to move to the new system slowly, slowly, little by little, right? And what Jeff is introducing in his work, in his podcasts, and in his book is the new world, like the new system. And he says, move your time to the new system. And so sometimes people read it and they get confused and they go, but how can I do this right now? It's like, it's daunting. I can't do 100% new. I'm still
Yeah.
in the old, right? Because you can intellectually maybe understand what it's talking about, but in reality, it's very hard to implement it. So have compassion, you have time, you are in a transitory phase, and you need to learn how to move yourself, because you need to make changes in your life and gradually move more and more pieces of your life to a new kind of reality. And that takes time and takes patience, and it takes changes, right? It may mean you need to move country, may mean you need to move jobs, may mean you need to move house, may mean you need to end up a relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, may mean that you have to teach yourself a new skill. It may mean many things to you. So you want to have compassion to that and understand that you are starting a journey, a process. It may not be done overnight, and it's
Right.
okay.
Right. And I also heard you talk about also in war zones like Gaza, that the money, like just the real money there is basically,
Eroded.
yeah. And and also controlled by like in Gaza, controlled by Israel basically. So how how in a very practical way, I mean, I loved it because it kind of brings it down to like really the real use of, yeah, Bitcoin.
Right.
You know, yeah, maybe you can tell us a bit more about
So,
that.
money is a problem everywhere, even in places that don't have wars, because
Right.
you have inflation, and
Yeah.
it's a silent theft. It's a kind of war, you against the system without you actually experiencing war. But then when you go to actual war zones around the
Mm-hmm.
world,
Mm-hmm.
or places that are heavily controlled by authoritarian regimes, like places like Africa or whatever, you experience even more hardship when it comes to money, because not only that you're under an inflationary system called fiat, but you're also experiencing oppression of some sort, and they're normally using money as a weapon, right? The money is being weaponized against the people in war situations, whether it's debanking, that the bank accounts close, whether it's actual banks that are being destroyed. Like in Gaza, most of the land is being destroyed, and so physical bank branches have been destroyed too. So you don't even have a bank to go to, right? Um, and then on top of it, if we go even one step further to the extreme, the money, this is what I was telling in the interview that you're referring to, the money in Gaza is not sovereign money of Palestine, because there is no Palestine at the moment, like legally speaking. There is Palestine that is controlled by Israel. And so Palestine does not have its own central bank. It has commercial banks, but it doesn't have a central bank like most countries around the world have. And it relies on the Israeli currency. So they don't have a euro or a dollar or a Palestinian currency. They have a shekel. Shekel is the Israeli currency. So they use shekels, and there are only two ways of receiving
Right.
shekels into the Gaza Strip are either through the Egyptian border, which is
Mm-hmm.
controlled by the International Monetary Fund, or through Israel, which is supposed to like give them aid or issue the money for them. Or, sorry, there's a third way, through Qatar. Qatar is like responsible to bring money to the Gaza Strip through Hamas, because Hamas is controlling the Gaza Strip, and they have their offices in Qatar. So these are the three ways that money can enter the Gaza Strip. And during wartime, a lot of these routes are closed for money to come in. Essentially, what is left is like Qatar and Hamas money. Um, so it creates a situation in which actual cash is not making its way into people's hands. And
Right.
so they have to do with what they have and to circulate it inside the economy. But they're already poor and they don't have food. So sometimes, even if they did have money, I don't know how they could get food. Some places they have food, and they have, it's not, and you got to understand also that the media is completely distorted and brainwashing you, whatever it is you're watching, whether you're pro Israel or pro Palestine, both of it is completely corrupt and very biased. So in one part you will see that they're lying, and the other side you'll see that they're lying. So don't trust anything. Don't even trust me. You can go check yourself. But basically, there are a lot of poor people there, and they have experienced a lot of death and destruction. And yeah, what I was telling is something that is really happening, that they're running low on actual notes, and so they have to iron the existing notes and put them to dry in the sun in order to continue using them, because they get worn out. Um, so that's a very extreme thing, and it's a desperate measure that you do when you don't even have money. But to be honest, even if when they do that, and if they do that, I don't think that that really changes anything in the bigger scheme of things. The only things that could change right now, things for Palestinians, is like stopping the war and creating some kind of a peace mechanism with Israel and with the other countries that could aid those poor people. But we're in the redistribution phase of the game where they are reallocating the land again. And I don't know who's going to control Gaza. I don't know if it's going to be Israel or foreign forces, whether it's the US or China or both. But BlackRock and Elon Musk and all these entities are, getting the carte blanche now from the US government to come in and be in charge of certain projects and a lot of money uh, in Israel and Gaza. Uh, this is what the war is for. The war is to destroy in order to be able to create again and continue to perpetuate the fiat monetary system. It needs to continue to roll the debt because it's a debt-based system. So they're creating wars so they can continue creating more money, basically. Sad reality, and people die on the way. And my main message when it comes to Israel and Gaza and everywhere else that is experiencing wars is that the people are always the victims, and no matter what side you're on, and they are being fed with hate and fear and anger so that they can continue fighting with each other and hating each other, while at that time the war can continue and the money can continue being printed. And people are being sacrificed, whether it's Ukrainian soldiers, Israeli soldiers, Palestinian lives, everyone is being sacrificed. The powers from the top that are orchestrating this show, they don't give a fuck about human lives. They don't care about anyone, whether it's my son going to the army and being killed, or whether it's a Palestinian boy being killed, or no one cares about the human lives. They just care about the bigger systems at play, and they need to perpetuate the existing systems. And that's why if you are an intelligent, smart, sovereign individual, you will be able to find your way inside that chaos and take care of, first of all, your life, your family's life, your community's life, your city's life, maybe even your country. And if you cannot make a difference in those bigger circles, you may move and start over, right? But you'll be able to live a good life if you are smart enough and sovereign enough. And that's what I'm trying to do in my life.
Just the ending questions, because I could continue forever, but everything has to end at some point. Yeah, so what is a new world in the making for you?
Oh, wow. I think what I just said, a new world in the making would be a world where people reclaim back their powers and their sovereignty and teach themselves new skills, become more intelligent about what's happening around the world, adapt to change, have compassion for themselves, and start walking the spiritual path to find the best version of themselves and understand that there is no end to this game. Even when you die, you just
Right.
roll over and continue. Um, and basically, in the end, it's all a game. And we're all creatures of God, sparks of light that are here to experience as much as we can, learn as much as we can, and evolve and have fun. And yeah, it's like, have fun while you're at it. Don't be despaired. There's nothing to be despaired about or get depressed. Even when times are really hard, snap yourself out of victimhood mentality and just find your way out of things. Be productive, be smart, be joyful, and live life to the max. Be all of who you are. Yeah, this is my new world in the making.
Love it. Love it. I always end the podcast with a question. So if you could leave the listeners with a question, a thought to just think about.
Question to the listeners?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. How do I win the game of money?
Right.
How do I win the game of money? How do I learn about money and make it work in my favor? And it's not to be rich, it's just to be able to live life well. Yeah. I mean, if you become rich in the end, great. But
Right.
don't be greedy. It's not about that. It's about just hacking that system and making it work in your favor.
Thank you so much, Efrat. It was inspiring and an honor. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.